Okay. Hi. I was just going to do the housekeeping stuff.
I know, but we want this to work.
We do. Mr. Kamek, good to see
I
you.
was Boehner Monday night, and we're kind of having, we're chatting everything. Who the hell is this Evan Smith guy?
I think this will be a robust conversation. As I've said to a couple of you, we're going to take a break from talking about politics and instead today talk about something completely non-controversial and something that nobody cares about, college football. I want to be sure we use the time available to us to do that and talk about many other things. Good morning. I'm Evan Smith. I'm the editor-in-chief and CEO of the Texas Tribune. I want to welcome you here to the Austin Club, where in a season like this one, an election season like this one with so much going on, we find ourselves together in this space quite a lot. We've been here not every week, but almost every week with candidates who are on the ballot, first in the primary and now in the runoff. We'll take a break at the end of May, go dark for the summer, and then come back here in late August or early September and pick back up the conversations with candidates in the November election. I think it'll be a great election season, and we have plenty to talk about. And then, of course, just over the rise is the 2015 session, so much to discuss. These events are part of the Tribune's mission, you know, which is to give people more information, to give them the information they need, particularly to be more thoughtful and engaged citizens in the state of Texas. News, data, and events are the three prongs of our deal, and we're thrilled to have the opportunity to be at the Austin Club somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 times a year with conversations like this one. You may be wondering, regulars may be wondering about the backdrop, which is different. Well, one of those conversations took us to Midland on Tuesday. Won't talk to you about how we got there. That was a whole weather issue. But we got to Midland College with Congressman Mike Conaway, and our friends at Federal Express lost our backdrop. Oh, right. UPS will now be given an in-kind sponsorship for all of our events as a result of that. So we have another backdrop that we're using on a temporary basis, and we'll have another backdrop made, and so life goes on. But I just didn't want you to think, well, I'm seeing something a little different today, and that's exactly what happened. Our events are, kidding aside about UPS, our events are supported, as the Tribune is supported, in part by corporate sponsorship. It's important to say always that corporate sponsors have no bearing on the program or the questions or the panelists, but they share the commitment that we all have and many people in the room have to the mission of the Tribune, which is to engage people in the state in an ongoing conversation about our priorities. Today's sponsors of this event and sponsors generally of our events, I want to acknowledge and ask that you acknowledge as well: St. David's Healthcare, AT&T, BP, and Christus Health. Would you please give them a hand for their generous support of the Tribune? As well, any of you who are members of the Tribune, and many people in the room are members of the Tribune now or have been in the past, some of you have been members since the very beginning, we thank you very much. We're a public media organization like your local public radio or TV station. If you like us and you give us a couple bucks, it helps keep the doors open and the lights on, and we thank you for that. If you're not a member, Natalie Choate is, as always, standing by the door, happy to sign you up as a member. We encourage you to join us if you're not a member. If you are not a member, though, you get to come to our events anyway. All but the big Texas Tribune Festival are free to attend. And we'll be back here in 2 weeks with State Senator Glenn Hager of Katy, the Republican candidate for Texas Comptroller, on the ballot in November. He avoided a runoff. unlike some Republican candidates. So he'll be back here with us on the 29th. We've already had the Democratic candidate, Mike Collier, previously, and so it ought to be a good conversation about the state's finances. I alluded to the Texas Tribune Festival, September 19th, 20th, and 21st. Tickets are on sale. Early bird pricing is still in effect, although come July, prices will go up and then up and up again, so we encourage you to buy tickets early. We've announced about half the people who are speaking. It's a great lineup, both United States senators, number of members of the congressional delegation, statewide elected officials, candidates for office, chancellors and presidents of universities, the whole 9 yards. Definitely of interest to this crowd. We'll be announcing another 70 to 80 names over the next couple of months. It's going to be great. We encourage you to buy tickets for that on the UT Austin campus. If you have a phone, turn it completely off. Some of you, Mr. Lippincott, I'm looking at you, will tweet this event despite my entreaties to turn your phones off. That's fine. So turn it to silent and use the hashtag TribLive if you're going to tweet this event. He is at SW Patterson. I am at Evan A. Smith. We are at Texas Tribune. So if you're going to tweet away, use the hashtag TribLive. We'll do about 35 minutes with our guest, balance of time, questions from the audience. And I know this audience and this guest, there will be questions. So we'll look forward to bringing you into the conversation. It'll be done by about 9 o'clock. Now it's my pleasure to introduce this morning's guest, Steve Patterson, the men's athletics director at the University of Texas. He succeeded DeLoss Dodds, who held the position for 32 years late last year. Previously, he served as athletics director and vice president for university athletics at Arizona State University, and before that had a variety of top jobs in professional sports, including as president and general manager of the Portland Trail Blazers of the NBA, senior vice president and chief development officer of the Houston Texans of the NFL, and general manager of the Houston Rockets of the NBA. A native of Wisconsin, he has both undergraduate and law degrees from UT. Please join me in welcoming Steve Patterson. Thank you for being here. Good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
It's good to be back.
I thought we'd start with a little news that broke late last night or overnight and see if you're willing to comment on that. Many people in the room who are college football fans and fans of the University of Texas in particular have been interested in this young man from USC, Max Wittek, who is said to have been a great prospect for the quarterback position for UT, and it was assumed for the last couple of weeks he made a few visits. We're going to get this kid. It's all going to be great. The world will be back where it should be. We find out last night that it looks like he's not coming, and that we're back to David Ash and the kids. That may not make people in this room happy. I, of course, am agnostic, but people in this room may be thinking, I've seen this movie before. Can you tell us whether this is true and what people in this audience can expect?
You know, I think there's some sort of NCAA rules about what I'm allowed to say.
Oh, it'll just stay in the room. I'm sure they're not watching the live stream. It's fine.
It's like, is the letter here? Is it signed? Is it fully executed or not?
Yeah.
I really leave it up to the football coaches on a day-to-day basis as to who's in, who's out. I think the reality is you go through spring football, and I know last time when I was at ASU, our quarterback there was number 3 in the spring, and by the time we got to the fall, he was one of the best in the Pac-12. So, these things ebb and flow, and I think one of the fun things about athletics is it never comes out exactly like you think it's going to.
A lot of twists and turns still to come.
A lot of twists and turns.
And maybe the Wittek story is not yet done.
Maybe not.
Well,
stay tuned.
I thought I would sneak that in there, and maybe you would give us an indication. All right. Well, let's stay with college football for a second.
Brian over here. He'll be able to tell us.
Brian is hoping you'll tell him actually right now, and I'm hoping also, and I'll overhear it. Let's stay with football for a second. I want to ask you about last week's NFL draft.
Yeah.
First time since 1937, no Longhorns selected in the draft. Dude, Garrett Gilbert got drafted. What are we to take? Well, SMU fans in the audience, get out. What are we to take from that bit of historical data?
You didn't have enough talent on the roster.
Just say it just flat. We didn't have enough talent on the roster. Is this a metric of success for the university? Should it be a metric of success for the athletics program that we didn't have anybody drafted? You all didn't have anybody drafted for the first time since 37?
If you have enough talent on the roster and you win enough football games, you're going to wind up with more of those student athletes getting drafted. The reality is, if you look back over the 120 years or something we've been playing football,
right,
we average about 3, sometimes 4
right,
football players a year getting drafted. If it averages out with that few a number, you may have a year where you're not going to get anybody.
Yeah.
And you might have a year where you get 5 or 6.
Were you surprised? Jackson Jeffcoat, it looked like that the Cowboys might scoop up Jackson Jeffcoat just for kind of emotional reasons, right?
Well, I think people in general don't understand how dominant you have to be in high school to have a chance to play in college, and then how dominant you have to be in college to even have a chance to get drafted and play in the pros. So, you sort of watch, and it's tough when you're scouting. You're watching athletes, and they sort of stick out compared to their competition, but their competition isn't the guys that you're going to play at the next level.
Yeah.
So you really have to be overwhelmingly dominant. You have to have the right size. You have to have the right speed. Athletes that can get by in college playing against much smaller players can't make it when they get to the professional level where everybody's as big and fast as they are. Work ethic, smarts, off the field issues all factor into it.
Yeah. Another person who was drafted during this NFL draft last week was Michael Sam from Missouri, who will be the first openly gay football player in the NFL. And you may know that national news was made. Michael Sam was drafted. ESPN showed footage of Michael Sam kissing his boyfriend upon hearing this news. And Case McCoy, former quarterback of the Texas Longhorns, tweeted immediately, ESPN, the words were, ESPN, you can't be serious, or something to that effect. Basically, it was implied a criticism of ESPN for showing Michael Sam kissing his boyfriend. A lot of national news about this. This can't be the kind of attention associated with the program that you particularly want. Did the university have a point of view about Case McCoy's tweet? I guess he's departing now, so maybe he's no longer someone you need to be concerned about.
Well, I try not to really pay much attention to people's tweets.
Yeah. Well, but other people did, and he was associated with the Longhorn football program. Did you have a point of view, or do you have a point of view about
I think as long as the guy can play, great.
Yeah.
Help you win ball games. When you're in the pros, all you care about is winning ball games.
Yeah.
You got to win some ball games. You got to make some money and make the owner look good.
Right.
If you do that, you're doing your job.
Okay. Why did you want this job? What exactly about this job appealed to you? Why did you want it? Why did you think you'd be good at it?
We were very happy at ASU. I think Mike Crow is wonderful to work with, and he's done phenomenal work for the last decade. This is the only school I would have left for.
The only school you would have left for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my alma mater twice, and three of my sisters and brothers. My oldest son goes to school here.
Yep.
I think the opportunity to take the resources we've got and build something even bigger and better, to be able to follow a legend like DeLoss Dodds. He was the most innovative person in college athletics for 3.5 decades. And so the challenge is, can you build on that and build something better?
Right.
And I think given the resources and given the emotional attachment, it's a great opportunity.
Was there something about the years that you spent in professional sports that prepared you to come back to do first ASU and now UT? What did you learn there that you could translate down to the college sports job?
Well, I think there's a couple of pieces of my background that made sense here. One is I grew up in a family of educators. My father and mother ran a prep school. My mother's side, there was 9 kids. I think 6 or 7 of them went to college. I think 4 of them graduated in an age group that went to college before the GI Bill from a little town of 900 people.
Yep.
That's fairly shocking. But education was inculcated in all of us from the beginning. So you take that aspect of it along with the reality that in professional sports, to try to create enough resources to support our student athletes as best we can, you're going to have to generate revenues, market a brand, do all the sort of things that professional teams have done. And UT has been, if not at the cutting edge or beyond it, very close to it in terms of all the things that DeLoss and Chris and others did here for years to put the program where it is. So if we're going to continue to stay ahead of the Michigans and Ohio States and others that are chasing us, we have to continue down that path and continue to be better at it every year.
It seems like professional sports is as much about branding and as much about business as it is about the actual games themselves these days. And you seem to be focused a fair amount on that aspect of it. The interviews you've given, since you've been here, you've talked a lot about taking the University of Texas brand out to the rest of the country, taking it out globally. One imagines that's a linkage, at least, that the experience you had in professional sports gives you a perspective on the opportunity to build a robust brand and to bring in money and to do all the things that pro sports do.
Well, I think the athletic department at all universities is the front porch of the university, and it gives you a chance to tell the story here at UT or elsewhere at the universities about all the great things that the universities have to offer. So there's a handful of universities that have a national or potentially more international presence. You go around the world, you see Longhorn merchandise on people everywhere you go in the world. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to do what we can to expand the brand nationally and internationally, to carry the story of UT and all the great things that have happened here under Bill Powers for the last dozen or so years.
So this is the way in for a lot of people who might not otherwise be aware of or interested in UT. They come through, as you say, the front porch.
Yeah, if you look at, I tell the story a few years ago. I was at Oregon with a group of YPO, WPO folks, and we were meeting with the director of admissions and the athletic director. And the director of admissions said, this is right when they started their run about 4 or 5 years ago, that they could have admitted the entire freshman class at Oregon from out of state. Never in the history of the school had they had applicants equal to even 1/2 of the slots in the freshman. And I asked her why. She said, oh God, the football team. The football team gave us the platform to tell the story about Oregon and all the great things that happen up here, despite the rain that comes down 9 months of the year.
Yeah, right.
So, same thing happened at Auburn. When they went it, their applicants went up 100% from the year before. So, your donations go up, your interest goes up, the kind of professors that you can track goes up.
Yep.
Research dollars go up. So all those are important aspects of what you have to do to support universities, and particularly public universities, who are not getting the same level of state support that they got historically when folks like us were going to college.
So successful college sports actually reverberate back in a positive way to the university in all the things you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
If athletics is the front porch for the university, it also appears to be the storefront in some respect. You know, the business of athletics is a big deal on many campuses, and on this campus particularly. I looked this up. You said to the San Antonio Express News earlier this year, college athletics is largely an under-leveraged asset. Mm-hmm. I kind of thought, how much more leverage can this asset get? Right now, UT is doing, the last numbers I've seen, $165.7 million annually in revenue, 22 million more than the second place school, Alabama. Wall Street Journal reported on the most valuable college sports programs, college football teams specifically early this year. They put the net worth of the University of Texas football team at $875 million, number one among all college university teams, 63 million ahead of Notre Dame, which was in second, and 190 million in Michigan in third. How much more can you leverage this asset? I mean, obviously it's big business here. You're bringing in a lot of money.
You know, it's a relatively decent-sized business if you looked at it against real businesses out there in the world. Mm-hmm. The reality is most athletic departments are about 3, 4, 5% of university budgets. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's our UT budget? About $2.5 billion. So, you know, although you can look at it in absolute terms and say, you know, $165 million is a big business, it's really not inside the university. And that's true across all universities. We were at $65, $68 million, I think, in that range at ASU inside a $2 billion budget. Yep. So when I say I think it can be leveraged more, when I was in the pros, you saw the relationship with the fans is very short term and very much, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
You know, did you win or lose this year?
Right. And
people get on and off the bandwagon pretty quickly. The reality is, when you look at college athletics, the emotional attachment is multi-generational. It's very deep. You go to college, you get your education, you get your first start into where you're going to go in your career. You often meet your spouse. Your kids go to school there. Your grandparents went to school there. Your parents went to school there.
Right.
So you have a very deep and broad kind of an emotional attachment. I don't think, and given the scale of number of people, we put 1 million people through the doors at Texas on an annual basis. Given the depth and breadth of the emotional attachment over multi-generations, and the number of people that come through the doors, the number of eyeballs that watch our games, the number of folks that buy merchandise, I don't think we've sufficiently leveraged college athletics as an industry.
So where else do you put a price tag on college sports?
Where else do you put a price tag?
Well, I mean, how do you?
I think the rates are underpriced.
So you think
and I think you
can
could do
raise the rates for corporate sponsorship? You can
Sure.
raise the rates for ticket prices?
Sure. Yeah.
You get out of here alive. You say that, actually.
Yeah. No, I think when you compare it to the pros and what people are paying,
Yeah.
we're far undervalued.
Right.
And the other thing is, I think the pros have sponsorship activation-wise, and how we work with our sponsors, how we work with our viewers, our consumers on the internet. We're really probably a couple of decades behind where the professional ranks are.
Right.
And were we able to operate in a more integrated fashion as an industry and do a better job of providing better value to our consumers, we could generate far more revenue, I think.
What are the obstacles to doing that? What control don't you have that you want to be able to do that?
I think historically, because of how universities are operated, where most, certainly at the state schools, most of the employees are state employees.
Yep.
You have very different rules about, for instance, how you compensate people, right? Very often it's very difficult, for instance, to pay somebody on commission, right? Ticket salesperson or a sponsorship salesperson. It's very difficult to move somebody out that's decided to retire on you and not tell you that.
Right.
So, and also it's difficult to leverage the images of the university, how they're working. It's difficult to be able to tell stories. So your first question off the hop when I walked in here,
yeah.
What about the potential quarterbacks at UT? We can't talk about it.
There are just limits on what you can say and what you can do.
You can't say.
Right.
Whereas if you're in a pros, you could do a better job of providing that kind of information
Right.
and that kind of value to a consumer, and then that's more valuable to the consumer. It's more valuable for the sponsor. Generates more revenue for the university.
Right. Now, you all have been able to do some things over the last couple of years, and you can put this along a spectrum. Maybe the Longhorn Network would be one opportunity to leverage the asset a little bit more. That's over here. But just in terms of making money, back at this end of the spectrum, just selling alcohol. Right,
Yeah.
which is a subject of a lot of interest.
Yep.
Let me ask you about those two ends of the spectrum in order.
Sure.
So has the Longhorn Network turned out as a deal, the deal that you imagined it would be? Has it been as successful as you thought it would be?
It's a tremendous asset, and it's very successful for us. It's financially successful. It does a great job of producing wonderful content.
Yep.
And it allows us a platform to tell our story across the entire nation and internationally on a channel that is totally dedicated 24/7 to the University of Texas. I think some people figured that getting the amount of carriage that you'd like to get quickly, they were overly optimistic on.
Right.
I've watched these battles. I've been in these battles. My father helped start one of the first sports networks in Houston years ago with HSC. You don't get clearance everywhere instantaneously. It's a multi-year battle because those folks that are carrying the programs want to have all the programs in the world for free and charge their consumers as much as they possibly can and build their profits, which it's their business.
Over time, though, on this thing, in this question, carriage has grown on the Longhorn Network.
Dramatically.
It seems like every time you pick up a paper, somebody else is picking it up.
2 weeks we'll be on Dish, and we're in discussions with Comcast and Direct, and we'll see where that gets by the fall.
Let me ask you about selling alcohol at games. This is not, a lot of people thrilled about this, yay, but then there's also some people who view this as a little controversial, and other universities may be looking at you guys and going, well, what are they doing? Well, I asked John Sharp, the chancellor of Texas A&M University System, about the decision to sell alcohol at sporting events at UT, and he said, if I were a UT sports fan right now, I would also be drinking.
Fair shot. That's pretty funny.
That's a pretty good shot, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Can you explain the thinking behind this and why what the material effect of this will be? Why this is a good decision? What the impact will be?
I think it's relatively simple, and if you've been in the industry, it's easy to see where people are uninformed and may have opinions that don't really make any sense based on facts. So based on the facts, generally what you see in buildings that serve, you have far fewer issues with alcohol disruptions and incidents. You have a far better fan experience. It's what people want. And you capture the revenue out of it, which makes sense for the venue. There's about 30 schools out there that serve in the general seating. There's far more that serve in the suites and clubs. I mean, most schools serve in their suite areas and club areas. So, are you only going to serve the rich folks and not everybody else? It doesn't
So this is a
particularly-
populist move on the part of UT.
That's exactly how it was viewed at the University of Minnesota, and their incidents went from 24 alcohol-related incidents the year when they didn't serve to 4 the next year, because what you have is
It's always the rich people who make trouble. That's what it is, right?
yeah. Well, no, what you have is far less binge drinking, far less problems in the parking lots, far less people going out, having 6 drinks at halftime and coming back in. And
Yeah.
when you run buildings for years, you sit on the radio and go, okay, here they come. Oh yeah, there he is barfing in that section. And there we are having a fight in that section because somebody's binge drinking outside the building. So you have a safer environment, a better environment. You look at Austin, you look around the city, and you go, hey, if you want to go to a minor league baseball game, you can get a beer. You want to go to a minor league hockey game, you can get a beer. You want to go to 6th Street and watch some music, you can get a beer. If you want to go to the racetrack, you can get a beer. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to serve responsibly, monitor it.
Right. But meet the demand.
But meet the demand and give somebody a good consumer experience, because the reality is we don't really compete with those venues and their shows directly. What we compete with is the couch and the 80-inch flat screen that's got high def, where if you want to have a 6-pack and watch the game on the couch, you can do it. It's not all that bad of an experience.
Right. The decision to carry the brand I alluded to earlier out to the rest of the country and out to the world. You're talking about, and I'm just sort of picking here just examples of this. You're talking about playing in Mexico. You're talking about playing in Dubai.
We'll see where things go in Dubai.
But it's under discussion, right?
Yeah,
It's under
sure, yeah.
discussion. You've got basketball set in China for 2015. Is that right?
Yep.
You have a 3-city tour in 2018 with Michigan State, Florida, North Carolina, where you're going to basically travel around. Why is this a good thing for the university? Where does this fit into your overall strategy of brand development through the athletic program?
Sure. We sit in a conference that's sort of middle of the country, sort of red states in the middle, and if you really want to have a national presence, you have to be in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so our Barnstorming tour that we're going to do with the men's basketball team does that. It gets us to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles with great media coverage. We're going to open the 2015 season in Shanghai against the University of Washington. It'll be the first time any U.S. universities have played a regular season game in China. It gives us an opportunity to be in the largest, most populous country in the world. I was over there with ASU's basketball team last summer. Phenomenal experience. It's a great opportunity for our students to learn and experience the world. It's a great opportunity for bonding for the team. It's a great opportunity to carry the message of the University of Texas. And when you look where we are compared to some other schools in the country, UCLA is over there with 70 retail stores open in China right now. So we're actually behind the curve. We're not leading the curve on that. Right. So we need to catch up. You look at what Notre Dame's done, for instance, with going to Ireland and playing games over there. Fabulous, the kind of attention they get in that country and what it means for them. You look at what they've done with playing their out-of-market games in pro stadiums around the country. Fabulous what it's done for them to build the brand nationally. So there's a lot of work for us to do, I think, to leverage this brand that we've got to help grow as a business and as a brand presence around the country and outside the country.
Any concerns about unintended consequences of this? I mean, I've heard people, when they talk about the prospect of playing in Mexico, people naturally say, well, are there going to be security issues around this? Are there going to be any other ways in which, good intentions aside, this can go off the rails for the university? What do you think?
Well, I think, you're always worried about security when you travel, your student athletes everywhere. So we have a security presence and police presence, and we consider that everywhere we go. The reality is if you look at the arenas and the stadiums down there in Mexico, you look at every band that's touring in the United States,
right?
Where do they go? They're going to Mexico City and having a good show and a good take out of the market in terms of revenue. We have business relationships, folks going to Mexico City. I mean, I was talking to our international folks just this morning, and they were just down there working there this past week. The reality is that there are violent things that happen in Mexico. There are violent things that happen in the United States. There are violent things that happen in every country in the world. You have to be prudent about what you do, be safe about what you do. There's plenty of neighborhoods in this country I wouldn't go walking into at 1 o'clock in the morning. So, be careful wherever you go in the world.
Why Charlie Strong? As opposed to somebody else? I mean, I don't have to talk about Nick Saban, but why Charlie Strong? Why was he the right choice? Why is he the right choice?
We sat down with our committee of about 6 or 7 folks to look at criteria of what people wanted to see in a coach. We sat down with the former letter winners, to see what they wanted to see in a coach. You know, we wanted somebody that was a good recruiter, somebody that was concerned about academics and made sure that our student athletes, once they graduated, were better individuals and when they came out than when they came in. Somebody who was strong defensively, somebody who had a sense of toughness about them, somebody who could deal with the media and the donors and the alums. And with that set of criteria, we looked at you know, a broad swath of potential candidates. About 30 sort of were on the initial list. Some of those folks liked where they were. Some of those folks weren't really quite good fits. We sat down with about a half a dozen folks individually and talked to them. But when you interview, and a lot of you interview folks for jobs, usually you either sit in somebody's office or you sit in their office or you sit, if you're trying not to be in the press, maybe you pick a hotel suite somewhere, you know, or if you don't really care, you could be at a restaurant, let's say. Well, Charlie, when I called him, I said, I want you to come to my house. I want you to come to my house. I want you to meet my family. So when you interview somebody in a scenario like that, it's very, very different.
Yeah.
And you really get a full sense of the man and his family. And we spent 4 hours with him in his kitchen, at the kitchen table, with his wife and his 2 daughters.
It's a little bit like a recruiting visit, isn't it?
And that's exactly what it's like. You know, so you get a real sense of the man, what it's like when he's going to go into somebody else's kitchen and sit down across the table and say, your son should come play football for me at UT.
His persona, as we've seen it through the press so far, has been really interesting. You know, I was very surprised to hear him say, our players haven't earned the right yet to throw up the hook'em sign. And he said quite matter-of-factly, we are not going to the national championship. And I thought, they're going to run him out of town with pitchforks and torches. You say, you have to be optimistic about the prospects of the team. The fan base will just go bananas. Doesn't seem to have happened, but I have to say I was kind of surprised to see that level of bracing candor come out of him.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Were you surprised? Were you surprised to hear him say we're not going to go to the national championship game? I mean, I can't imagine that that's got to be orders from the home office. Go out in the press and tell them that we're going to stink this year.
No. What I like about Charlie is his focus on what the statement means to the team and the individuals on the team, and he means
tough love.
It's tough love. You know, you guys haven't earned it yet. Show me something better.
Right.
And
is he right? I guess this ties back to the question of why no Longhorns were drafted in the draft last time. I mean, maybe they haven't earned it. Maybe he is right.
I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah. And so are you prepared to say we're not going to go to the national championship game this year?
I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I think the great thing about athletics is, you know, as my father used to say, come November, we're going to throw the ball up and you can decide whether to join us or not and see what happens.
Yeah. It all remains to be seen.
It all remains to be seen.
You alluded to academics, the relationship with academics to athletics. Yesterday, it was reported that you had a perfect score of 1,000 in the academic progress rate for the 2012-2013 academic year. Is that the first time that's happened for the university?
For football and men's basketball, it might. I'd have to look. It certainly is a good score.
This is a consequential accomplishment, right? This is a big deal to get a perfect score when there is so much criticism of the degree to which the athletic program is either viewed differently or treated differently or views itself differently with regard to its obligations. For all the talk of student athletes, the fact is this is really stepping up. And I just wonder if you have any sense, you've only been there for a short while, what exactly is the secret sauce here that has gotten the athletic program to really make that leap academically?
Well, I think year in and year out, you have to make the commitment both amongst the academic tutors and mentors and the coaching staff to make sure that everybody's focused on trying to have the best academic outcomes that we possibly can have. You know, I think as a group, universities haven't done a very good job of telling the broader story about student athletes.
Yep.
And you know, the reality is we get too caught up in the sports press talking about the 0.5% of student athletes that might go on and play in the pros. You know, you look at UT baseball over the 100 and some years we played, we got just over 100 Major League Baseball players. You know, we average less than a half an NBA player per year over the course of the 69 years that the NBA's been out there.
Yeah.
And we talked earlier about, you know, a couple, 3, 4 football players maybe a year getting drafted. So our job really for the 99.5% is to make sure they come in, have a great experience, graduate, and turn out to be better than when they started at UT. And so academics is the lead, most important factor in that. And so We look at our student body this past year, we averaged over a 3.0 across the 500 student athletes that we had. We had 150 kids that had a 3.5 or better out there. And when you think about it, between the time you're spending on athletics, it's really like having a full-time job. And then you're going out and getting a 3.5 grade point average.
Right.
That's pretty darn good. I couldn't have done it.
You say that athletics is like having a full-time job. You're just perfectly setting up my questions here. If it's a full-time job, why not pay them?
The fact of the matter is, if you look at what the compensation is for full-ride student athletes at most universities, you're actually getting more compensation than the average household income.
Well, is that a story that's just not being told?
Oh, I think as an industry, we've done a lousy job of telling the story of what really happens and what really goes on university campuses. You know, as I said earlier, we're far too focused on the one or two folks here. Look, you look at it, as successful as the University of Texas has been for this many years, to have that few number of folks actually play in the pros should tell you something about what's going on. You got more than 500 student athletes every year out there participating. You might have one baseball player. You might have 0.4% of one basketball player. You might have maybe a couple of 3 football players every year. And that's it. So the other 495 students,
it's about going to college.
it's about going to college.
Right.
And the reality is they will stand in line to have that opportunity to play at a university like the University of Texas and get this kind of education.
So your position is that we shouldn't be asking the question of whether we should pay college athletes. We're already paying college athletes.
We're already compensating them with a full scholarship to come to a great place like the University of Texas. Now, can you argue that perhaps you should be able to do a better job of feeding them, or a better job of making sure they have enough money if they have a family emergency to get home, you know, or those kind of things? Look, we're all for that. And quite frankly, if you look at the case, the NLRB case that was filed earlier, if you look at all their complaints, we already do all those things at the University of Texas. Mm-hmm. I can't talk about what they do at Northwestern or Montana State or someplace else, right. But at UT, you get those benefits.
Well, I have to ask you,
using their likeness in the marketplace.
To be able to make it.
Yes.
I am a Northwestern alumnus, and so of course the unionization question is of interest to me, just because you know I'm curious. You have spoken out aggressively against this idea of unionizing college athletes. You said, this was one of the many great quotes you gave on this subject, the whole thing smells of guys in the legal profession looking for a fee.
Of course.
You think this is grown-ups who are trying to figure out a way to make a buck off of these kids, essentially pushing them out in front and saying, you know, you all make this argument and we're going to stand back here and benefit from it.
Well, if you look at the professional landscape, the reality is there are more agents than there are players. So what are you going to do to grow your base of business? Well, you can't. I mean, the pros aren't adding any more teams.
Right.
They're not adding any
so you
more
need more
rosters.
clients.
You need more clients. Where are you going to go get them? Oh, great. Let's go unionize all the college athletes, right? And then maybe I can make a buck skimming my 4% off of some poor kid's scholarship. You know, so it is the adults preying on the student athletes.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, universities, the NCAA, the conferences have done a lousy job over the last dozen years of telling the story what college athletes is really about. You know, next to the GI Bill, the next biggest source of college scholarships in the United States is college student athletes. And you think about the change that the GI Bill made in this country over the last half century. The next biggest one is college athletics. And that's not the story that people understand in the marketplace. We're spending too much time talking about whether some guy who played down the road should have gotten compensated more for the autographs he signed, and not the other 500 student athletes that are on the campus that football and men's basketball essentially supports.
Do I understand you're going to chair a committee now within within the Big 12 or within the NCAA? You're going to chair some kind of committee that's going to look at these issues, the portfolio of issues around
do a better job
compensation.
of talking about the issues.
Yeah.
You know, because I think, as I said, we've done a lousy job of telling the
Is your
story.
position the position of people in your job at other universities? Is this, everyone kind of agrees we're doing a better job than people know? This is a communications problem in part?
In part, in part. Yeah. You know, I mean, at different universities there may be differing levels of student support.
Yep.
And you know, the reality is people don't understand that but for a handful, and we're one of in the handful at the University of Texas, every college athletic department out there loses money. I came from one of the ones that was one of the most subsidized when I got there in the country, where there were $10 million a year in the hole. And so your choices become, if you really want to go out there and start turning the football players into employees and paying them, you're not going to have the resources to support the other programs. That's bad for the rest of men's athletics. That's bad for the rest of women's athletics. Is what's going to happen? You're going to have to cut those teams and get rid of them to get your costs down, to get in line, because there is such pressure on state budgets and state university
So one net
budgets.
effect of paying athletes is you'd have to pick winners and losers.
You pick winners and losers, that's right. Instead of trying to present a broad base of student athletics on the campus. And the reality is in my view, the objection or to the current system and the wanting to be an employee, that concern is misplaced. It shouldn't be with the universities. Our position is real simple. Look, if you want to come here and go to college and you want to get a scholarship, great, come do that. If you want to be an employee, go talk to Roger Goodell. Go talk to the NFL Players Union. Go talk to the owners of the NFL. If you want to be an employee and make a buck, go over there. That's where you belong. That's where your bitch is, not here.
The one or two more, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. With regard to the Big 12 and conference play generally, your sense is there's not much interest in realignment at this point, that the landscape as we see it now is likely to be the landscape we see for the next little while?
Yeah, I don't get a sense either. I came out of the Pac-12 recently. There, I think the conference is very set, not wanting to change any. The Big 12, I think, is comfortable where it is right now with our setup. I don't get a sense that there's a change there. I think the Big 10 has expanded about as far as it possibly can.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this realignment was driven by television revenues from the cable outlets largely, that is derived from two sports, football and men's basketball. But what happens is nobody really was looking at the cost side of the equation. And so you had this bump in revenue came by adding up these other media markets into your conference. But what nobody looked at was the increased costs that came with that. That now all of a sudden you've got to send the volleyball team and the rowing team and the gymnastics team and the tennis team to much further cities, much bigger travel budgets, much more chartering as opposed to flying commercial. You get an increased cost in that you get more students missing more class time, which gives you more trouble with the faculty, which makes it harder to have the APR numbers where you want them to be. I think it does wear on the student athletes too much. And so now people are starting to recognize the cost that came with these expansions, and the picture is not as rosy on a net basis as it looked like on the gross basis when they entered into these agreements.
Right, but generally speaking, it's going to stay where it is.
I think amongst the larger conferences, I think they'll stay where they are. I wouldn't be surprised to see some moving around in the smaller conferences.
UT going to ever play A&M again on Thanksgiving?
I don't know. Somebody's got to present a business plan that makes some sense.
That's what it's about.
Well, the reality is we're going to play in Dallas every year against OU for the foreseeable future. And so those other games that you may play outside of the conference are very, very valuable. And I look at it as how do you use those as platforms to derive the most value for the university and the student athletes who are here. So is there more value in playing UCLA in Dallas? Is there more value in playing somebody in Mexico City? Is there more value in playing in Los Angeles and New York than playing in College Station?
There may be.
There may be.
Okay. Let's go to the audience for questions now. We have a microphone. We'll walk around. I know there'll be people with questions. The former chancellor has a question. Right there, and then gentleman with the hat. Mr. Burke.
Steve, welcome back to Austin. We wish you the very, very best.
Thank you.
I would like to...
This is going to be a tough question, I can tell.
It will be, maybe, but I know he can handle it.
Yeah.
On the subject of unionization, Evan asked the question, or made the statement, it's all about trial lawyers lining their pockets. Then I believe you went on to say you've got you've got trial lawyers probably about as well regarded as state legislators. Now, I know that our leadership at the universities work very, very hard constantly with the state legislators, and I believe there are some very fine legislators here in the state of Texas. My question to you is, have you had any kickback on this, and do you have any further comments about it?
I hadn't had any kickback, and it
Until now.
No, it presumes how you feel about trial lawyers. Having another one in my family, I tend to like my little brother, who's a trial lawyer, so I feel quite good about state legislators as well.
So you meant it as a positive?
Of course.
Okay. That was a nice turn that around there, okay. Sir?
Very sad to see the Pennock Allison Tennis Center about to be demolished to make room for the parking garage or some component of the medical school, although I'm a big supporter of the medical school. Just wondering if you have any information for us on the plans for the construction of the new center at Intramural Fields. And the bonus round, I'm wondering if you've seen Draft Day with Kevin Costner and what you thought of it.
There is a lot of construction going on over there, a lot of things, kind of addition and subtraction and disruption. So what's it all going to amount to?
Well, the Dell Medical Center is under construction. Pennock Allison will get bulldozed next month. We've already got the arena well surrounded by construction fences. You know, there are trade-offs that universities make. The medical center is going to be a phenomenal benefit for the university and for the community and for the state. We're going to have to move. For the time being, we'll resurface some courts up at 51st and Guadalupe at the rec fields. We're in the process of being in the market to talk to donors right now about raising $15 million to build a new facility. We may partner with some other folks on that, but we need to raise the funds to build a new facility to have the next great Pennock Allison for many years to come. I think we'll get there, but if any of you are interested, we'd be happy to have you involved with it.
Is the basketball situation going to be stable for the next little while with your?
I think the basketball, Frank Irwin Center, we're probably, pick a number, 6-8 years out before the medical center, as I understand it, will need that site.
Fully, right.
Yeah. So we're going to have to be in discussions to figure out where we're going to wind up. What do the various constituent groups in the Austin area feel about it? You know, is it a building that just serves our basketball teams? Is it a bigger building that serves the broader community as it has for so many years? I mean, essentially, Austin's been in the position for 35 years that it had a free arena.
Yep.
And provided by the University of Texas. And so if we're going to continue in that role, we would be probably the only city in the country that has a metro population of $2 million that the city has made no investment in. And so we need to look at the various constituent groups and what is the expectation of how does that building function and what benefits does it provide to the university, what benefits does it provide to the community, what benefits does it provide to the basketball team, the fans, the other events that go on in there that the university puts on and the community puts on, and then how do we craft a building that meets those needs, and then how do people participate accordingly.
If the tennis center is a $15 million deal, a new basketball arena, the price tag on that would presumably be astronomical by comparison.
Yeah, if you look at Sacramento, they're going to build a new arena out there. They just voted on that. It was $448 million.
I'll just pass the hat, actually. That's what you do, right? Mr. Lippincott, and back there, and then Mr. Lippincott. Sir.
Yeah. What is your response to the criticism that while athletic department's going out and looking at Dubai and Mexico City, they're losing ground in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio to SEC and A&M, that the home base is not being taken care of?
Do you think the home base is not adequately attended to?
Well, we're finishing up the last of, what are we up to, 13 cities in 34 days.
This is Coach Strong is doing a
Charlie Strong tour.
Right.
You know, we had over 1,000 folks in Houston at Reliance Stadium. You know, I think those kind of stories are spread by schools that aren't a part of the University of Texas any longer, and it's wishful thinking on their parts. So we have the only network that covers the country now that we're going to be on Dish. We're going to continue to recruit this state very heavily. I'm not concerned at all about losing the home base.
You don't think that A&M's move to the SEC has in any way impacted your ability to be the top story or the big headline and to have the brand that permeates the the state?
It's not my job to worry about Texas A&M and what they do. It's
Yeah.
my job to maximize the University of Texas. So
Suffocate them by not giving them any oxygen, is that what it is?
no, actually, I think there's some things that potentially we could work on in the long run together. I got a lot of friends over there.
Me too.
Mr. Lippincott.
Could you talk about evaluating the baseball program at the end of the
I
season?
knew it was going to be a baseball question, yeah. Talk about evaluating the baseball program at the end of the season.
That's what we'll do, evaluate it at the end of the season.
I'm sensing in Mr. Lippincott's question some concern about the quality of the baseball program. Is that fair? Is that fair? Do you have any concern about the quality of the baseball program?
I think we'll evaluate it at the end of the season. I'd like us to be, I think everybody would
It's not
like
exactly a
to
vote
see
of
it.
confidence.
No, I think all of us would like to see the team performing at a higher level, but it's made a comeback from where it was last year.
Well, and in fact,
we'll sit down
to
and
the point
evaluate that
of
at the end
teams
the year.
coming back, basketball had a really good year this year after
Basketball.
not having a very good year for a series of years. These things ebb and flow.
Right. These things ebb and flow. You have to look at where you think the department is as a whole. We try to look at each one of the teams. What's their performance on the field and floor? What's their performance academically? What's their performance off the field? What's their performance financially? And look at it at the end of the year and see where they are and make that evaluation of each of them.
Right here.
There and then.
So my question is, we
hello,
talked a
Mr.
lot about
Baskin.
student athletes and the program that you're doing there, and then we talked about academics and the university. My question is, how does your program interact differently with the University of Texas in terms of advancing academics as a whole? How might it be contrasted a few years from now? Is there a different mixture of our investment into the academic outcomes because we have a lot more leverage than some other universities have? I know that the Longhorn Network has been generous with, it's been able to provide some revenue, but do you see that as a growing pool of opportunity for us to offset other challenges we have as a university?
It gets to the question of what the relationship between the university and the athletic program is and should be. So what responsibility does, I'm going to interpret this, Mr. Baskin. What responsibility?
It's good. I'm glad you can interpret it, because it was all Greek to me.
What responsibility does the athletic program have to the university in terms of academics, in terms of promoting academic achievement more broadly? What contributions does the athletic program make in a broader sense to the university?
For the student athletes or for the students as a whole?
Students
As a whole. Well, I think, as I said earlier, we're one of the few athletic departments in the country that actually runs in the black, and we do help support programs for the university, so to the tune of millions of dollars a year, and which is not found across the country, other than at a very, very small
Can you
handful.
quantify how much the athletic program kicks back to the rest of the university annually?
We're probably in the $5 to $10 million a year range.
Contributing back.
Contributing back, yes.
In addition to paying for yourselves, being
In
self-sustaining.
addition to paying for ourselves,
Yeah.
and in addition to telling the story of the university, we dedicated a percentage of our television programming on Longhorn Network to academics, and
Non-sports.
non-sports,
Right.
Every day, and so that's just two of the opportunities that we could talk about. We also do internships that help support what's going on the campus, and I think we can actually do more of them. And we'd like to actually expand some of the things we do with the business school and the law school and RTF
Yep.
and kinesiology to give students broader internship opportunities with those programs to help develop their skills before they go out in the marketplace.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, Agnes, I'll let you decide the order. Mr. Malcolm, and then on back. Sir.
Is there a tipping point coming in the decline of football due to head injury fears?
That's a
I
great
read
question.
about students being
Right.
taken out of these programs and parents expressing a lot of fears. Article in the New York Times about
Yeah.
Marshall, Texas, eliminating a grade's
Yeah.
worth of that. And I mean, we could be
Right.
10 or 12 years away, but
Certainly
looks like
hear
there's
more.
momentum.
Certainly hear more about that now. Are you beginning to see, as your folks go out to recruit, that there is any kind of hedge among families about the
I don't think so. I
dangers?
mean, I think there's been concern about concussions for some time. we actually reduced the amount of contact in practice and have done it before. A lot of the stories came out, so there's far less of it. I think when I was at ASU and here, we were involved in a number of tests to try to figure out exactly what causes concussions. I don't think it's completely clear the type of blows or the number of blows or at what angle does it happen, or how good are you at evaluating it when somebody's been potentially concussed. Those are all questions that are having a lot of research around to figure out exactly what are the causes. I think the interesting thing is you get a lot of focus on football. We actually have more concussion in women's soccer than we do in football. So I think it's something to look at across the board.
Your sense is that the problem is maybe being exaggerated? The magnitude of the problem?
No, I'm not saying it's being exaggerated. I think like any medical study, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. What I'm saying is there is a lot of study that has to go on to figure out exactly what the cause is. And it's not always immediately apparent.
All right. There. I saw that yellow shirt and person right in front of you. Yes, sir.
But we have taken a proactive role.
Have been proactive.
Yeah.
One of my most unpleasant fan experiences is when UT played a football game and it was 100 degrees. And it was clear that it was driven by television and when they told us to play the game. When do you tell the television network, no, we're not going to play?
You're talking about what time of day?
Yeah, what time of day? When,
Yeah.
in September it's very, very hot and we know that there are 7 p.m. games.
It's one of the costs that I was alluding to earlier when we talked about the reorganization of the conferences and taking the television money. I've sat in a lot of meetings the last year where that exact discussion has gone on. Last year when I was at ASU, they tried to get us to play USC at 11:30 in Tempe, Arizona in September. So I invited them to come down. That was July 7th. So well, come on down tomorrow. Let's go sit outside for 4.5 hours, in the morning, and tell me whether you think this is a good idea.
Do you have adequate leverage when situations like that come up where you can actually affect the outcome of these things?
I think all athletic directors and university officials would like to have more.
Would like to have more leverage. Right.
And it is a tussle with the networks and what you've signed up for. And I think similar to putting our kids on the road for too many nights, to fill in the windows on Monday night and Tuesday night for basketball or volleyball or other sports. I think we have to be very cognizant of the money that we have taken and the impact on the culture at the schools and when games are played and how they're played. When I was in the Pac-12 last year, and I don't mean to keep referring back to that, but there was a similar issue where Oregon and Oregon State played something like, I think, 5 out of their 7 home games at night. And they were trying to get ASU and Arizona to play 3 of their games in the day. And the culture at ASU and at Arizona, because of the heat, is to play at night. And people build their whole Saturdays around it.
Yep.
They're going to go to play golf, they're going to have dinner at the club, they're going to take the bus over the game. Well, the flip side, what's going on up north? When it's dark and raining and cold and everybody's driving 2 to 3 hours from Portland down to Oregon or Oregon State, and they're playing the game. It's starting at 7 o'clock and they're not getting out of there till 11 o'clock, and then they're trying to drive home and not getting home till 2:45 in the morning. That's not a good customer experience. And so it is a constant point of discussion.
It's an
on all
issue,
campuses.
yeah. Sir.
When you mentioned the discussion on conference realignment and the pressures that places, particularly on travel on the student athlete, and yet you're talking about extending the brand by going to Mexico City and China to doing a tour early in the season next year where I think it's taking the basketball team away for 2 weeks at a time. Do you think y'all are taking that into consideration as far as the pressures that's putting on the students?
It'd be a week, you say, not 2 weeks?
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, that's part of it, and I think you have to pick your spots when you're going to do that and what kind of a educational experience you're going to provide for somebody. I don't think you can do it all day long, all season long, but I think if you sat down and said, in reality, look, if you're going to create an educational experience with teachers that are going to teach you all about China, the language, the culture, the politics, you go over there with a number of tutors, you meet with a number of folks from the University of Washington, a number of folks from China while you're over there, and create an amazing educational experience, yeah, that's worth missing a week of class.
Right.
Yeah.
Over here. Yes.
Hi, Stephen. Wendy Wheelis with the Texas Exes. I don't think this is working.
It's okay. You have a pretty
We can
good
hear you.
outside voice. That's okay.
I've heard you speak before about your plans to endow each sport, and I'd
Yeah.
like to know your strategy for that, specifically about the lower profile sports.
Well, it's part of what we've done is looked at each one of the individual teams as individual economic entities. And, you know, men's basketball makes money, football makes money. We're fortunate at the University of Texas that baseball makes money. You know, hockey may make some money at some of the schools in the Midwest. But if you really want to have a sustainable department, I think in the long run, what Stanford's done in terms of endowing all of their sports, their endowment is $500 million for athletics. So they can make different decisions than we can make. They may decide they don't like signs in their football stadium. Well, we like signs pretty much at UT in our football stadium. And when I was at ASU, we liked signs on everything that wasn't moving in the building. So, but it costs about $750,000 to endow a scholarship for room and board, tuition and fees. And particularly for those sports that don't generate a lot of revenue, golf, tennis, track and field, some of the others, rowing. I think we need to explore that option for folks. And it really is an outgrowth of being donor-centric about people that want to be involved with the university. There are some people who want to put their name on a building. There are some people that want to endow scholarships. There are some people that want to endow academics. There are some people that want to endow trainers. And so for us, it's a chance to be more donor-centric and give them the experience that they want to have with the university, and at the same time, create a more sustainable group of sports on an ongoing basis that once they're fully endowed forever. And that's a great position for the university to be in. Our endowment right now for athletics is about $26 million. That puts us third in the conference. I don't think we should be third in the conference. That puts us second in the state to the school down the road. Theirs is about $70 million. And you get some folks like the Notre Dames and the USCs of the world. They're over $100 million. So I think we ought to be working towards fully endowing all our programs. Ultimately, that's about a $200 million undertaking.
1, 2. Can I just, I got to take, Darrell Wyndham lives across the street from me. I can't not take this one. He's going to toilet paper my house if I don't take that question. The gentleman, and then the gentleman right there, and then that'll be the last two.
Steve, you and I were in school in the Southwest Conference in kind of not the most glorious period in terms of compliance of the schools in the conference. And as a basketball fan, Mr. Klein and I particularly are basketball fans, we hear all these stories about AAU coaches and programs and the sleaze factor, and if you think football recruiting's bad, just talk about basketball.
Right. Yeah.
You've got some unique insight on that. I'd like to know what you think the status in our conference and in this country
of basketball recruiting is.
And recruiting, rules compliance in general, basketballs and football and basketball.
Right.
It's interesting. Every time the ADs get together, we were supposed to be talking about governance or student athlete support or whatnot, and it always winds up devolving into talking about who's cheating and who's getting caught and who's not getting caught.
So who's cheating? Tell us.
I don't know. I mean,
Come on.
I don't think.
We'll send Nick out of the room.
I don't
and
think
you can just tell us.
Right. I think the reality is, if we're ever going to have it operate sufficiently, we need to have subpoena power, either at the NCAA or in some entity. And if we have to contractually agree to that, that's something I think we ought to do.
Would you agree with it?
Absolutely, in a heartbeat.
The idea here is that the clean programs have nothing to fear from greater sunlight, right?
That's right. And those who do have something to fear, well, they're going to get exposed.
You don't want to name any names, you're sure?
Don't want to name any names.
Last question right here. Yes.
Director Patterson, with regards to equal amount of scholarships for women and men, it's a federal law. Is there athletic directors across the country who can't put up like men's soccer programs, can't put up wrestling programs? Is that an issue? Because those are really popular sports in high school here in Texas, but they they lose their popularity after high school because there's not a lot of scholarships, or they move over to northern states that do have wrestling.
Is there a
programs or
challenge
soccer
to do women's sports and men's sports at an equivalent level of commitment to them, right?
Right, but you have a women's soccer team, you don't have a men's soccer.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there are economic struggles on every campus, and ADs and presidents and chancellors struggle every day to try to balance the books. And at a certain point in time, they have to make tough decisions, you know, about what kind of programs are going to continue that can be supportive and what ones can't. And as I said earlier, you've only got 2 or maybe 3 sports that operate in the black. So then you've got to decide what are you going to do with the rest of the sports and what kind of an investment are you going to make in each of those sports. It's part of the reason that we're talking about endowing our sports, is that if you really want to find a model, if there are that many people in a community that want to support a certain sport, great. Come on out and help us endow it to make sure it can stay viable for, forever. That's really what needs to happen at a lot of schools.
All right, well, great conversation. Glad to have you here. Appreciate all the insight. Steve Patterson, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.